what concerns us the most is that these proposals, from all the evidence, look to have quite a dangerous and quite a damaging impact on democracy, particularly around voter ID. The government's asking voters to bring photographic ID. It's a type of ID that we know from the government's own research that over 2 million, about 4% of people, don't actually have. And we know that it's also not equally spread across society. So if you're unemployed, if you're older, if you have a disability, you're much less likely to have the sort of ID that the government's asking you to provide in order to vote. And so clearly that is taking a huge risk with the next election. What we don't want to see is people being turned away from the polling station just because they don't have the right papers. It's very hard to see why you would introduce such a costly policy with no evidence base of a need, and that will cause people to question what the motivations are. And we've seen how damaging raising the issue of fraud can be when there isn't fraud. We've seen that in the United States in the past year, and it's just a year on from the Capitol Hill riots. And as an example of what can happen when you start to play fast and loose with these notions of fraud and losers' consent in an election, which is so important. When you start questioning fraud, people lose their confidence in the electoral process, and we've seen that in the US, where confidence in elections is absolutely rock bottom. In 2019, which was of course a general election year, and many other elections as well, there were 33 reported cases of personation, of which only one of them resulted in a conviction and one of them resulted in a caution. So in terms of how many people out of the millions and millions and millions of votes were cast that year, we're talking minuscule amounts of the type of fraud that this voter ID card is seeking to deal with.